Well, we can speak now to Stephen Nix. He's the Regional Director for Eurasia at the International Republican Institute and joins us live now from Washington, D.C. via Skype. Sir, thank you so much for joining us here on Al Jazeera. A lot of developments when we think the election was really only just a few days ago. How do you read the situation in Kyrgyzstan right now?
Well, first of all, no one should be surprised that there were demonstrations and violence post-election. There's precedent for that in Kyrgyzstan, and we've always seen protests, people who were against falsification and violations of the election law. And this is particularly true in 2005 and 2010, when both times poorly administered elections led to transitions of power. So it's not surprising that this has taken place in Kyrgyzstan.
But so who do you think is actually in power now in the country?
Well, that's the key question. Right now, seemingly no one. No one seems to know the whereabouts of the president. As was pointed out previously, the prime minister has resigned. The speaker of parliament has resigned. So it's a real question as to who's in power, but decisions are going to have to be made. Certain factions in parliament are trying to meet now to try to form a transition government. And there is a self-appointed coordination council from some of the demonstrators that appear to speak for at least some of the people, but it's really unclear who is charged. And this uncertainty makes the way forward even more questionable.
And obviously, a power vacuum would always be risky. You mentioned earlier that no one should be surprised that we saw demonstrations in the past few days. What factors have led to this, both long-standing ones, but I'm guessing recent ones, perhaps COVID-19?
Well, I'll cite several. First of all, the government's failure to effectively manage the pandemic. It's been ineffective, and the state healthcare system simply hasn't been able to respond to people's needs. In fact, hospitals are being staffed up by volunteers and civil society. The state really hasn't been able to cope. Secondly, the pandemic has caused tremendous economic damage, severe unemployment. And then third, our IRI surveys show corruption continues to be a big issue. And a subset to that is the continued consolidation of power by the president and the executive branch. Kyrgyzstan is a parliamentary republic, as set forth in a constitutional referendum that was held in 2010. But so far, these reforms haven't been implemented. So a number of factors go into this, but I think the elections really was the turning point and really what fueled all the protest. And frankly, mismanagement and election fraud has been rampant in Kyrgyzstan elections. And so I think the people finally, their frustrations boiled over, and you saw the demonstrations. People are demanding three basic things. They want democracy, they want free and fair elections, and they want accountable governance, and they're simply not receiving that. So those are the factors that have resulted in the situation that we face today.
We've seen quite a lot of unrest in Russia's backyard when we look at what's happened in Belarus over the past few months, the latest spat between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and now this. What do you think the chances are that beyond the domestic concerns of Kyrgyzstan, that powers like Russia will try to seize the situation to gain more sway?
Well, the situation in Kyrgyzstan, like the situation in Belarus, is very concerning to the Kremlin. The fact that people are no longer afraid to speak up, to stand up, and to voice their support for democracy, for free and fair elections, and accountable governance. So there are a number of similarities between what's taking place in Bishkek and what is taking place in Minsk. And again, the Kremlin's fear is that a similar situation could develop within the Russian Federation. So a lot of concern on the part of the Kremlin.
Stephen Nix, Regional Director for Eurasia, the International Republican Institute. Sir, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and opinions on this story with us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.